So we are now going to look at resilience. Resilience is the quality that we can all cultivate and that can help us through so many situations in life. Whether we develop it or not depends on whether we say, I can or I can't. So let's get rid of the T in I can't and say, yes, I can do it. People have faced the most difficult situations in this life, but those that cope are those that have resilience. So what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to adapt to tragedy, change, stressful, adverse events. So can we bounce? It's like a rubber ball. If we need rubber, if we have rubber in us, we're going to be able to bounce. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but we will develop the ability to cope because we will bounce and not shatter. So how do we go about developing resilience? Well, there are a couple of skills that we need to seriously think about. For example, we have to make social connections. We need people and healthy relationships. Excuse me. You know, we are social beings. We are not meant to live in isolation. And this has been one of the major problems with lockdown and this pandemic, is it's interrupted the way we socially interact with others. It's separated families. It's kept old people behind bars where young people cannot hug them anymore. But we do need social connections. And here we have to get a bit creative as to how we're going to develop and maintain social connections. And certainly the world of technology has opened up wonderful opportunities for us to still remain connected. So get thinking how you can make social connections, how you can people have thought of all sorts of ways when they need to connect to someone who's perhaps having loss, but we're not in a position to visit them. They formed a convoy of cars waving at the person that they would like to make a connection with. We personally did it recently with a whole lot of old people that we know. We went past them and we had balloons and we waved and had a sign, we love you, just to make sure that these people knew that they haven't been neglected and forgotten. So making social connections is one of the most important ways that we regulate our nervous system. So isolating ourselves can have a very detrimental effect on our mental well-being. So that's a good place to start. And our resilience depends on the connections and relationships we have. Here's one: avoid catastrophizing. We all know people who are like the drama queen. Anything happens and it's, hands in the air, this is the end of the world. It's an absolute catastrophe. And they really exaggerate, and really it does not help one to cope with stress. So we might have a tendency towards catastrophizing, and seldom do those catastrophic thoughts ever come true. So you and I need to stop ourselves and think, are we catastrophizing? Are we making a big thing out of something? Are we making assumptions and jumping from A to Z with nothing in between? It would be a good practice, because if we catastrophize, we discourage ourselves and we're not going to try. Number 3 is accept that change is a part of life. Everything changes. If nothing changed, we would have stayed as babies. But we learn to walk, we eventually go to school, we learn to talk. Our life changes. Some changes are good, some we struggle with, but change is a part of life. So if we are inflexible, not liking change and not accepting it, we are going to shatter, because we won't have that rubber in us like a ball that can bounce. So we need to know and accept change is a part of life. And sometimes we cannot change what's happened, but there is always our attitude to change to help us cope with the situation. So we can, at the end of the day, remember our 3 circles of control. We can look at what we can control and what we need to accept. Develop realistic goals. How are you using this time? What are your goals for the future? Are they realistic? Are you perhaps expecting too much of yourself? You know, I've been on many webinars recently with this COVID-19, and everyone is struggling to a certain extent. So let's be realistic. Most people are not just sailing through this whole crisis. Many of us have down days where we don't feel as productive as others. We feel a lack of motivation. We have a sense of fatigue. There's this underlying uncertainty and grief of the losses that people are experiencing. As humans, we're all connected. And so there's this connective and collective kind of grief that people are going through. So be realistic and have some goals. Have something that you can actually work at and accomplish during this time. Taking action is one of the most important things. Going back to our 3 circles of control, remember there's many things that we could only influence, and there are astronomical number of things over which we have no control and no influence. But we can take action over the things that we do have control. So how we look after ourselves, the decisions we make every day, take action, schedule time so that we're not left at a loose end, not knowing which way to go. If we need physical exercise, we need to take action where we can. And if we need to work on our attitudes and accept certain things, then that is where we're going to take action. An opportunity for self-discovery. Every change brings about new things, new opportunities, new ways of doing things. So some people have really just immediately gone into creative mode to think of what can we do to change things? How can we cope? What opportunities there are? How many people have discovered that they actually hated their jobs and their previous way of doing things because it wasn't working? And many have now turned into self-discovery. And we know they say that challenge is what pushes us to be creative, and it's the mother of invention. So what can you discover about yourself? Have you signed up for any courses? Have you done anything to discover what are your goals? What are your strengths? And how you can tap into them. So for many, this has turned into quite a positive thing of discovering what their strengths are. Number 7 is remember we're stronger than we think we are. How many times have you and I said, oh, if that happens, whatever, we'll never cope. And yet we do. As humans, we are stronger than we think we are. And when we have to cope with something, we find a way. The human spirit is amazing. Keep things in perspective. We discussed that earlier. Other generations have been through major issues, and let's keep things in perspective. We are not the only ones who are going through a difficult time. And although our feelings are important and we want to validate our own experiences, it's also helped to keep a little perspective going forward. Maintain a hopeful attitude. This too shall pass. Many things change. We saw how quickly change happened now in the beginning of 2020. This too shall pass. And take care of yourself. There is no greater time than now for you and I to look at our physical and our mental well-being and take care of ourselves. We cannot pour ourselves out as an empty jug to help others if we are empty and overwhelmed and we haven't taken the time to look after our physical and our mental health? So what are you doing to look after yourself? Remember, that's part of putting the bounce back in to being resilient, is how healthy we are. We know that people who are having great struggles with COVID-19 are those that have a lowered immune system. So what is your immune system like? Now's the time to build it up, to see what you can really do. And number 11 is learning to show gratitude for small things. How many of us we took for granted that we could hug our friends and family. We took for granted we could go to the coffee shop. So many things we took for granted. And within a week, there were sudden changes. And all that we were familiar with was suddenly changed. So, but now's the opportunity for us to show gratitude for small things. And to just think of what we do have, because a person who is grateful, it's a state of mind. A person can be grateful even when things are difficult. There's always something to be thankful for. And having that sense of gratitude is what also helps us to then deal with difficulties and challenges in our life. So, how resilient are you? How resilient am I? Are you ready to bounce? Or are you going to shatter from this experience of COVID-19? We hope that this is all put together to help you to see that it is possible. We can control ourselves, we can develop better attitudes, and we can bounce.